cushion. I think the other caveat that we should mention is that we know sort of the party affiliation of the ballots that are being returned, but we don't actually know how individuals voted, right? So there is a possibility that Democrats have decided that they're fed up with Gavin Newsom, they're interested in trying something new, and that they're voting yes on question 1, on the question if he should be recalled. But I think that what we've seen from polling throughout the state, really consistently throughout the year, is that there hasn't necessarily been a huge appetite among Democrats to recall Gavin Newsom. Newsom's problem in the middle of the summer, when things looked a little dicey for him, was that Democrats just weren't really engaged at all. And so unless we see sort of large-scale defections of Democrats from Gavin Newsom, I think the fact that we are seeing Democrats have this position when it comes to ballots looking so far, likely, but not definitely, means good news for the government.
You're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition on KFI AM 640 and everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about the Gavin Newsom recall.
When Bill and I needed new windows over 20 years ago, we picked a company we thought would do a good job. We were so disappointed.
So we saw a genuine need for a company with strong character, one that people could have faith in.
American Vision Windows was born right then and there.
What sets American Vision Windows apart is easily the culture. Their greatest investment is in their employees, and it shows.
It was a great experience. I couldn't have asked for anything better.
I've been in the construction trade for 35 years. The level of quality of products that they use for their prep work was top-notch.
American Vision Windows continues to revolutionize the home improvement industry, one customer at a time, while changing the lives of our employees for the better. It's so simple.
Happy employees, happy customers.
For a limited time, American Vision Windows will pay the tax. Plus, you won't need to make payments for 6 whole months. Call 888-226-9908. That's 888-226-9908. Or visit AmericanVisionWindows.com. On approved credit, not all applicants will qualify. Some restrictions apply. Call or see website for details. Offer ends 10/31/2021. CSLB number 778326.
In the Army National Guard, family means everything.
Our parents, they were really supportive that all 5 of us were joined. I got my education because of the Guard. I got to travel a little bit and experience a whole different culture. They helped me get my job, helped me pay for my house.
Serving part-time in the Army National Guard instills pride that you and your family will share. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn more about part-time service. Sponsored by the California Army National Guard. Aired by the California Broadcasters Association and this station.
Contractor license 1047-781. Hey, Kenny Winnie, what Rick told us is pretty cool.
It's Ken. You know it's Ken. I need to hear you say Ken.
Rick runs Gettle Academy, where we train plumbers and AC techs.
Rick told me something that made me so happy I had to wipe tears off my cheeks.
A student said, I knew working at Gettle was going to be a great opportunity, but I didn't know it was going to change my life.
That's what it's all about, Wacky Zacky.
When you work at Gettle, you know you matter.
You know you're making a difference.
Your customers and your coworkers love to see you coming,
and they miss you when you're gone.
Other companies expect you to upsell the customer.
But Gettle techs have only one job. Make the customer happy they call us and trust us to fix their problem.
Ken sits down with all the new people once a month and talks about the future, and answers all their questions, and learns all their names.
I sit down with everybody once a month just to hear what's on their mind.
Come to work for Gettle. GOE-GPL.
You'll be happier than you've ever been.
Southern California Edison has helpful info for emergency preparedness. Since the kids are older, we need to update our family plan again.
You're right. And let's review it with them so they know what to do.
They should know our evacuation plan, meeting place,
what to do in a power outage, and where the safety kit is.
Good thinking. We can write down important phone numbers and put them in the kit.
You think of everything.
No, I just went to sce.com/be prepared. A little preparation goes a long way.
KFI, AM 640, more stimulating talk.
Yes, I know. I have a calming demeanor. You know, when it's your job, basically, to push people beyond their comfort zones, it's good to make them feel as safe as possible. Like an open-heart surgeon for your home. You'll do fine. No worries. We got it.
Home with Dean Sharp, the House Whisperer, this morning at 9 on KFI AM 640.
More stimulating talk.
This is KFI AM 640. I'm Oscar Ramirez, and you're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. President Biden is going to be campaigning for Gavin Newsom as well. That's going to be an interesting test of political power for the president as well, to see what happens there.
Absolutely. I think that Governor Newsom's team really wanting to see this race nationalized as much as possible as a way to really juice up Democratic turnout. But we've seen Vice President Kamala Harris is in San Francisco on Wednesday, trying to rally for her longtime political ally / enemy / frenemy. They have a very interesting relationship.
Right.
Now we have President Biden likely coming out to some. Today we actually saw news that former President Barack Obama just cut a television ad on behalf of Governor Newsom. And so we are seeing sort of the Democratic establishment in the nation, not just in the state, really galvanized. And I think that is most likely to Newsom's benefit, because it is another way to maybe wake up some Democrats who haven't really been paying attention and convince them to turn in those ballots.
How about money in this campaign? It seems that Gavin Newsom has spent about $36 million so far, him and his allies, I guess. They're spending so much more money than the recall proponents.
Yes, and I think that's another way where you see some institutional advantages on the governor's side, partially because of the function of the recall campaign finance system. He can collect unlimited size checks, and so we've seen massive checks by his political allies being written to him. He can also coordinate with labor unions and other sort of well-funded allies. That in a normal campaign season, there would be campaign contribution limits, and there would be sort of firewalls between these independent efforts. Now they can sort of throw all that money together in a pot. They can combine all of their forces on the field. And what you have for some of the folks running for the recall, if they want to be to replace the governor, is that you have not seen the Republican Party or pro-recall proponents coalesce around one person. There seems to be a frontrunner in Larry Elder, the radio talk show host, but even still, that's somebody who's maybe garnering around 20% of the vote in those polls, and so that does not necessarily mean gigantic sums of money that they're being able to rake in, and that makes it much harder for them to advertise on television, which in a state like California really is necessary.
And for the proponents of the recall, what are they hoping for? I mean, obviously they need a big turnout, but as you mentioned, Larry Elder, some have said that he might be hurting the recall effort now from past statements that he's made. So what are the proponents looking at for success?
I think that part of the issue is that you have a pretty fractured field of proponents, right? I mean, you had a sort of scrappy band of activists get together to get this recall on the ballot, and really, I think, defy a lot of the predictions from political pundits. They got it done, much to the surprise of Gavin Newsom. But then, since there has not been a Republican Party endorsed candidate, for example. So you have lots of different candidates who are running on different messages. Larry Elder has leapt to the top of the field in part because he does have name recognition, particularly among Republicans in the state. He has been on the air, on the radio for quite some time. But with the good also comes the bad, right? He's somebody who's very recognizable, but he's also never been a political candidate before. So all of a sudden, we have all of these past statements that he's made. He's given some national interviews that perhaps have had some controversial comments in the last couple of weeks. And so Elder both is great in terms of exciting the Republican base, which I think that recall proponents want to see in order to get that yes on recall vote out. But then there's also perhaps the flip side, which is that he might turn off some voters who might not be super thrilled with Governor Newsom, but don't love the things that Larry Elder is saying. So those are both the pros and cons of being a lightning rod.
Melanie Mason, national political correspondent at the LA Times. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This coming week on September 15th, we'll also see another ambitious space flight from the private sector as we see the first all-civilian mission to orbit the Earth. SpaceX's next crewed mission will be called Inspiration 4, and the crew members will orbit the Earth for 3 days. They'll conduct science experiments and fly higher than the International Space Station. For a preview of this next big space mission, we'll speak to Miriam Kramer, space reporter at Axios.
So the mission is called Inspiration 4. It's the brainchild of a guy named Jared Isaacman. And it came together really quickly. I mean, he sort of started to talk to SpaceX about this at the end of last year, and they announced the mission in February. The really interesting part about this mission to me, though, is that Jared, instead of deciding to kind of bring a crew of his friends along for the ride, he opened up the selection process to many, many, many people. I mean, once he was chosen through a raffle, once he was chosen through sort of a funny, like, Shark Tank style competition for entrepreneurs. And then St. Jude, who's partnering on this mission as a fundraiser, chose the other astronaut that's getting to fly with this crew. So it's a very interesting selection process.
On the St. Jude side, they picked a childhood cancer survivor who was treated by them. She's now a physician's assistant there at the hospital. The interesting for all of this, right, is obviously civilians. They're not astronauts by training, but they have been doing a lot of training for this. Well, how does that work out?
So since they were chosen in March and announced for the end of March, early April, they have been going kind of nonstop. I mean, they have been out to SpaceX almost every other week for a couple of the crew members to get trained up on everything that they need to know to live and work in space. They're only going to be up there for 3 days, but they need to basically be briefed on every system so that if something doesn't go exactly right, they'll be able to fix it. So they've gone through centrifuge training, which basically simulates what it would feel like to launch. They have done water rescue training for when they splash down and come back to Earth, and they even did a 30-hour simulation at SpaceX headquarters where all of them were in close quarters in the Dragon simulator, the capsule simulator, that's an exact replica of what they'll be flying in space, and they lived in it for 30 hours together. So they have gotten to know each other very well.
Yes, definitely. This launch is going to be on September 15th, right?
It will, yeah.
And then what is the actual mission going to consist of?
So a lot of it is going to be them doing some science experiments up there. I think they're going to try to, probably talk to the kids at St. Jude, maybe do a few media events. But I think a lot of it is going to be them, taking pictures, looking at Earth, experiencing what life is like in space in this small capsule together. I mean, I think that they're excited about learning what it's like to sleep in space, what it's like to eat. Everything is going to be different.
Yeah, they'll be orbiting Earth for about 3 days. And as I mentioned at the beginning, right, so we've seen the billionaires go into space, or the edge of space at least, right? These are for commercial flights that they're hoping to do. What is the hope for this type of flight, this type of mission? What would this lead to?
Well, I think for SpaceX, their big goal is to eventually bring many, many, many people to Mars. Elon Musk has talked about wanting to build a city on Mars before. And this is the kind of mission that you sort of have to learn how to fly in order to do that. When you want to do something as ambitious as building a city on Mars, you're not just going to be able to rely on government-trained and backed astronauts. It's going to have to be, normal people. I remember Elon said something sort of funny and flippant in 2015, but that has resonated a lot. It's basically okay, if you're going to have a city on Mars, you need pizza parlors on Mars. You need people to just sort of live there. So I think that this is the very, very first baby step toward understanding what it would take to make that a reality.
And for SpaceX, what are they using? What are the rockets they're using? What type of flight equipment are they using?
Yeah, so this is the Falcon 9 rocket. So their workhorse of a rocket has a great track record. It has flown people to space 3 times now. This will be the 4th crewed mission for SpaceX. And they're using a Dragon capsule that had actually previously been to the space station. But the interesting thing about this Dragon is they are modifying it. So instead of having a docking adapter at the top, which is what you need to attach to the space station, they're instead going to have this really cool big bubble window that they're calling it the cupola. So it's going to be this incredible 360 view of space.
Wow.
They'll be able to float around up in there and just sort of see what it's like.
How much of this process is going to be automated?
It will be. A lot of it is controlled from the ground. Usually people in the capsule don't need to take over unless something is going wrong or unless they want to. The Dragon has a lot of autonomous features, so it likes to fly itself in a lot of ways.
September 15th, we'll be able to witness all of that. Miriam Kramer, space reporter at Axios, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
You're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition on KFI AM 640 and everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. I'll be back with some more top stories from the week, but first, let's get an update from the KFI newsroom.
KFI, news on the hour, on the half, and when it breaks.
I'm Mark Bronner from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. A homeless man has been arrested for allegedly stabbing a security guard to death behind a strip mall in Anaheim. Anaheim police say Joseph Gomez was stabbed in what they're calling an unprovoked attack in the parking lot on West Lincoln Avenue. The 24-year-old homeless man was arrested as he tried to leave the scene. LA County Health Director Barbara Ferrer says 100% of COVID-19 cases in the county are the Delta variant.
Fully vaccinated people are well protected from severe infections with Delta variant. It's now clear that fully vaccinated people can become infected, and if infected with Delta, they infect others.
Ferrer says cases per 100,000 people are down 50% from mid-August. Despite the drop, Ferrer says the CDC has still classified the transmission of the virus in LA County as high. Southland weather from KFI. We'll have highs in the 70s at the beaches, mid-80s to mid-90s for Metro LA, OC, with a heat advisory in effect until tomorrow night. We lead local. From the KFI 24-hour newsroom, I'm Mark Ronner.
Checking KFI traffic, we do have a crash in the Anaheim area, 91 eastbound at 57. That has the carpool lane blocked. To Eagle Rock, road work on the 134 westbound from Colorado Boulevard to Harvey Drive. The two right lanes coned off until 9 a.m. And through Sylmar, 210 westbound between Rockford and the 5, all lanes closed until 5 a.m. Monday. In Norwalk, on the 605 south at Firestone Boulevard, crash there blocking the left lane. KFI in the Sky helps get you there faster. I'm Jonathan Weiss.
The Metropolitan Water District of Southern California encourages you to do what you do best in a drought. Save water. Right now, we need just a little extra. For water-saving tips and rebates, visit BeWaterWise.com. That's BeWaterWise.com.
Rates subject to change without notice. Minimum loan amount requirements apply. 50% loan to value and 740 FICO credit score. Certain restrictions apply. Subject to credit approval. NMLS 3290. Loans made or arranged pursuant to a California Financial Lenders Law license number 6036970. Equal housing lender.
Unbelievable. Home loan rates have dropped again at IntelliLoan. Today, IntelliLoan is offering a 1.875% rate in the APR with no points and no lender fees. Did you hear that? A 1.875%. Don't think you qualify? I bet you haven't called IntelliLoan. You don't have to have perfect credit to get this great home loan. So lock in this unbelievably low 1.875% fixed rate in APR with no points and no lender fees. So call IntelliLoan before the rates go up. Call them at 1-800-918-6200. That's 1-800-918-6200. Or just go to IntelliLoan.com.
IntelliLoan. Borrow smart.
What's the deal? $1.99 breakfast croissants. Right now at Wendy's, you can get a sausage or bacon, egg, and Swiss croissant for just $1.99. Fresh cracked eggs, oven-baked bacon, grilled sausage, all on a hot and buttery flaky croissant. Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary.
Radio advertising can connect your business with holiday shoppers wherever they go. Use iHeart Ad Builder to create an affordable custom radio ad right on your phone. Just click, listen, approve, then hear it on the radio. Create your customized ad today at iHeartAdBuilder.com.
We have the greatest fans in all of baseball.
Join us on Monday, September 13th to celebrate a Dodger legend who needs no introduction.
Hall of Famer Tommy Lasorda.
Be here as the Dodgers play the Diamondbacks and arrive early, since the first 40,000 fans in attendance will receive a Tommy Lasorda bobblehead presented by Security Benefit.
Rest assured he's smiling and his spirit is with each and every one of us.
For tickets, visit Dodgers.com/promotions. KFI would like to thank the Radio and Television News Association for making KFI News the winningest news outlet in Southern California.
KFI AM 640.
More stimulating talk.
An iHeart radio station.
This is KFI AM 640, heard everywhere in the iHeart radio app. I'm Oscar Ramirez, and you're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. The number of men that are enrolled at 2- and 4-year colleges has fallen behind women by record levels, and there seems to be no reversal in sight. Part of the problem is that fewer men are applying to college, but there's also a whole host of other issues, including rising cost of education and the need to make money now. Some say the time and energy required is not worth the cost. Others have a lack of guidance or feel lost on what to do next in their lives. For more on how young men are giving up on college, we'll speak to Doug Belkin, higher education reporter at the Wall Street Journal.
So around 1980, women and men had parity on enrollment. And then ever since then, there's been a few more women every year that have increased over men in enrollment. And it's continued to grow inch by inch. And then during COVID, it accelerated significantly. And now we're at a point where it's at a record level. It's across 2- and 4-year schools. 40% of enrolled students are male and 60% are female.
Yeah, and we had seen 1.5 million fewer students compared with 5 years ago. This is for U.S. colleges and universities. 71% of that drop was in men. And in the next few years, we're going to start seeing for every man that earns a college degree, 2 women are going to be earning college degrees. So, I mean, in that sense of things, it's great for the women that they're picking it up on that side. But why do people suspect that men are just dropping out so much more?
many different things going on with this that it's tricky to unpack. But some of the reasons that are informing what's happening are that, first of all, right now, under COVID, there's a tight labor market. So there's a lot of work you can do, especially warehouse work and driver's work, that a lot of college-age kids are interested in doing. Men are a little bit more reluctant to go into debt than women. So that's one thing. Women are much better students in high school. So there's way fewer guys who are college eligible, college material, when they graduate. They graduate at lower levels and they enroll in lower levels, and then they graduate college in lower levels. So they're less successful students, and there's a lot of conversation about why that is. One of the most provocative theory is that K-12 schools, 85, 90% of the teachers are women, and the schools are taught by women for girls, and boys are considered broken girls. That's the phrase that gets tossed around in these conversations. And that the education system punishes boys who have just a greater facility to get up and run around and move and can't sit still and concentrate, and girls are more able to do that. So by the time boys are in second, third grade, they're not such a big fan of schools. They drop out at higher rates. They get suspended at higher rates. They get diagnosed with ADHD at higher rates. So it starts early. This is supposition, what I've just told you, and a lot of folks have looked into that, but that's kind of the gist of why they think this is happening. And then the other big structural shift, I think, that's happening, that's been happening for a while, is that, in the 1970s, the United States moved away from vocational education. They said, we're not going to invest in this. What we want is a workforce that is college educated, college for all. And that just doesn't work for a lot of people. Of every 100 people who start college, 59% graduate in 6 years. That means that 41% don't, and it's actually greater for boys. So if you're not succeeding at college and you're risking going into significant debt to go to college, or even getting a degree and being underemployed after college and not being able to pay off the debt, then you think, to hell with it. And for guys, they think, well, there are other options. And those options in the last few years have begun to assert themselves, right? Apprenticeships and sort of faster, cheaper credentials and pathways to the labor market are appearing.
You spoke to a number of young men in this very case right now, and to your point right there, you spoke to a boy who's 18 years old who basically, he's a great student. He didn't want to go to college. He took a landscaping job, makes $500 a week, and then earns money other ways as well. I think he makes some music, invests in cryptocurrencies. And so this is kind of a path that a lot of young men are taking.
There's a huge amount of interest. The two things I heard, I've reported search for several months, and the two things I heard the most from these young guys were crypto and Amazon. Amazon's hiring, there's a couple $1,000 sign-up bonus, check it out, and crypto, easy money, get in early. There's a lot of that, right? I mean, we decentralize not just finance, but music, or you can make a go and making a living in music. You don't need a record label deal to make it $20,000 a year now. There's just different options with the internet, and guys are tuning into this. On my TikTok feed, it's filled of side hustles to make extra money here and there, and I think there's just a sense among Gen Z that you're a sucker if you are working for a corporate 9 to 5 because you're going to get tossed away as soon as they don't want you. So maybe a sense of independence that's asserting itself too a little bit more among the men.
Right, the quick money. Let's start making some money now, saving it, investing it in crypto, all that, versus quote-unquote wasting your time in colleges. And for the colleges themselves, it's not for their lack of trying to get more men to apply and succeed and stay in school. You mentioned in the article, too, a number of programs geared towards helping men at Baylor University just to help them submit their high school transcripts. They have programs called Males and Moms Communication Campaign, just to kind of to give them that extra edge if they need it.
There's two things happening. There's enrollment and there's retention. And the schools have been pretty aggressive under the table. They don't talk much about this. They've been pretty aggressive in putting their finger on the scale for men in admissions. And that means that if you have a son and a daughter, it's probably easier for your son to get admitted, especially to a private college, than your daughter, because there are just more strong, eligible women who are applying to these schools. And these schools want to maintain at least a 40% number of guys, because that is the just a sort of golden line there. Women are less likely to want to apply to a school if they really outnumber men. But that's one of the things that's not talked about, but it's been going on for a while. The other issue is retention. And it's sort of the third leg of the story, and it's really a fascinating issue, but it cuts across the issue of the politics of the universities. Universities were built by wealthy white men for their sons. And everybody who is going now, who does not fit that description, the blacks and the Jews and the women who built bridges to get into universities, they had to do just that. They had to make it fit for them, and they've done well. The universities are they don't look like they did 20 years ago, and they're starting to reflect the nation a lot more. But the hangover for that is that these white guys in particular, there's a headwind for the school to say, hey, let's help these guys out too. They're hurting. And the response is, these are the most privileged people in society. Why should we be pouring money into them when we really need to be helping poor black guys or Latino women or whatever it is? And so they get caught up in that. And that's an issue too.
One of the things you mentioned in the article and from talking to some of these young men is this feeling lost, not necessarily knowing what to do next. One of the people you spoke to called it a hope deficit, this lack of guidance that young men have. How did that play out in your conversations for this story?
Fatherlessness was a big problem, it remains a big problem in the black community. I think it's 68% of children are raised in a single-parent household. That is now a significant issue in the white community, and I don't know about the Latino community, but this is spreading across the country pretty well. And to be raised without a dad is not good for either a brother or a sister, but boys are more vulnerable as children in a lot of ways. It sounds a little counterintuitive, and they are more vulnerable to some of the problems that are associated with fatherlessness. So as fatherlessness becomes a more socially acceptable and more widespread issue, boys are suffering at a little bit of a higher rate than girls. So that's probably feeding into this whole mess.
It doesn't seem like there will be a reversal in the very, very near future. It seems like this would take some time. Have administrators, anybody, colleges, universities, anybody that you've talked to, feel like they might have a plan to reverse some of this, or we're just going to kind of keep, trying the best they can to, as you mentioned, applying and then the retention there?
I don't see this turning around, frankly. What I see happening is the rise of these intermediate credentials. I think that the 4-year diploma has reached its apex on the pendulum swing, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work as well as it used to or as well as it should, and it doesn't warrant it. The value's not there. So I think we're going to see just a growth in apprenticeships and these other things. And I think there's going to be a cultural shift and acceptance of women who are going to be having more high-powered jobs and earning more money, because the bottom line is the gateway to the C-suite and to a lot of the most powerful positions in this country remain through college gates. And I'm hard-pressed to see any evidence right now that this is going to turn around. If you look to Europe, there are countries in Europe where this is far more pronounced. This is a post-industrialized phenomenon that's happening in Europe now, in Australia. So schools are scrambling. They have some strategies. They have some tactics. They're making some headways in short bursts. I doubt it'll hold, but we'll see.
Doug Belkin, higher education reporter at the Wall Street Journal. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
You're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition on KFI AM 640. When we come back, we'll tell you how TikTok can serve up sex and drug videos to minors.
Most mortgage lenders charge a fee, sometimes up to 1.5 points for pulling cash out of your home's equity. Those points are on your whole loan balance, not just the cash you get. For example, if your loan amount is $400,000, that's a $6,000 fee. For a limited time, Owning will waive this fee so qualified borrowers can get a cash-out refi with absolutely no closing costs of any kind. Besides the usual no title, escrow, appraisal, etc., no fees for a cash-out on a 30-year fixed mortgage. So if you're in process somewhere and paying fees, call 8332-OWNING or go to owning.com, where our rate and APR for a no cash-out fee 30-year fixed mortgage is 2.625%. But hurry, the mortgage industry won't like this, so who knows when this special goes away. Call 8332-OWNING or go to owning.com.
NMLS 2611, licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Subject to credit approval. Call 833-852-6464 for terms and conditions. Equal housing lender.
Income-eligible renters impacted by COVID-19 can now get 100% of their past due rent and utility bills paid through the California COVID-19 Rent Relief Program. Landlords with tenants who haven't paid rent because of COVID-19 are eligible for 100% reimbursement too. The application is fast, your information is private, and you won't be asked about citizenship. Apply at housingiskey.com before eviction protections end on September 30th. Brought to you by the California Department of Housing and Community Development.
When Bill and I needed new windows over 20 years ago, we picked a company we thought would do a good job. We were so disappointed.
So we saw a genuine need for a company with strong character, one that people could have faith in.
American Vision Windows was born right then and there.
What sets American Vision Windows apart is easily the culture. Their greatest investment is in their employees, and it shows.
It was a great experience. I couldn't have asked for anything better.
I've been in the construction trade for 35 years. The level of quality of products that they use for their prep work was top-notch.
American Vision Windows continues to revolutionize the home improvement industry, one customer at a time, while changing the lives of our employees for the better. It's so simple.
Happy employees, happy customers.
For a limited time, American Vision Windows will pay the tax. Plus, you won't need to make payments for 6 whole months. Call 888-226-9908. That's 888-226-9908. Or visit AmericanVisionWindows.com. On approved credit, not all applicants will qualify. Some restrictions apply. Call or see website for details. Offer ends 10/31/2021. CSLB number 778326.
Southern California Edison has helpful info for emergency preparedness. Since the kids are older, we need to update our family plan again.
You're right. And let's review it with them so they know what to do.
They should know our evacuation plan, meeting place.
What to do in a power outage and where the safety kit is.
Good thinking. We can write down important phone numbers and put them in the kit.
You think of everything.
No, I just went to sce.com/beprepared. A little preparation goes a long way.
The biggest stars from all genres of music will share one stage at our 2021 iHeartRadio Music Festival.
The T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas.
2 nights of performances you've never seen before. Streaming free on a CW app and CWTV.com. And listen on iHeartRadio next Friday and Saturday, starting at 7 p.m.
Capital One is a proud partner of the 2021 iHeartRadio Music Festival, bringing great products, rewards, and services to their customers. What's in your wallet?
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
911 system is totally broken. You called, you're on hold. You get a recording saying the first available operator will get to you. People call 911 and they ask for recipes for cornbread. And what's even worse, the 911 operator Bill Handle gives it to them.
Mornings from 6 to 10 on KFI. I hate retail.
You know, my philosophy is if you can't get it free or wholesale, you just don't need it. There's my philosophy in life.
Costco or nothing.
Now, let me tell you, it's either on sale or wholesale or you just don't need the product.
Bill Handle. Mornings from 6 to 10 on KFI.
KFI, AM 640.
I know the weight of the world seems to rest on your shoulders, and sometimes life seems like it's filled only with confusion and chaos. But I assure you, I have a plan for you. The Jesus Christ Show. This morning at 6 on KFI, AM 640.
More stimulating talk.
This is KFI AM 640, heard everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. I'm Oscar Ramirez, and you're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. Finally, for this week, the Wall Street Journal set up 31 TikTok accounts registered to teenagers to see what the algorithm would serve them up. What they saw after thousands of videos was a never-ending stream of content related to sex, drugs, and eating disorders. TikTok's algorithm is engagement-based, so spend any amount of time on a video or rewatch it, and you'll get a flood of similar content. The company uses 10,000 people and other algorithms to police content, but the app does not restrict certain videos based on age. For more on how TikTok serves up videos to minors, we'll speak to Georgia Wells, reporter at the Wall Street Journal.
The process of what happened is we all have been talking a lot about what are the videos that we saw on TikTok. And not surprisingly, talking to friends, talking to the folks on this team, it was sort of funny hearing that, like, you know, I get a lot of dogs on TikTok, but, like, one of the people on our project was getting a lot of power washing videos. Apparently that's, like, a thing. And so we were starting to wonder, what does TikTok serve to teens? Like, how can we find more information about the experience that teens are having or can have on TikTok? So we set up these 31 minor accounts, and so we kind of assigned them a date of birth and an IP address, and also interests. And so this meant that these accounts would have interests that they would express by rewatching videos associated with certain content. So we're like, okay, what do teens like? Well, some teens think about drugs, some think about sex, also other topics. So then we let loose these bots on the For You page, and they chugged along and rewatched content related to their interests and skipped content that
was not kind of related to these interests that we had pre-programmed. But this was the only way they were expressing these interests. And the finding was pretty stark. TikTok can quickly drive minors, among the biggest users of its app, into these endless pools of content about sex and drugs.
And that's what the findings showed. I mean, you spend a little bit of time on one topic, people talking about some sexually explicit behavior or things related to that, and then what the app's going to do is serve you up, reams of that same stuff. And that's what you guys noticed. You guys even, shared some of the findings with TikTok, and some of those videos in turn got banned or got removed because, it didn't fit guidelines.
We noticed, certainly some of those videos were taken down before we approached TikTok about them. And so it's either TikTok's moderators caught them or the creators themselves took them down. We're not sure which. Then certainly after we approached TikTok with some of the videos, TikTok then removed many of them. And also our understanding is TikTok can also set videos to not necessarily be removed from the platform, but not recommended to more users. So certainly there was some action. So for example, one of the bots was registered as a 13-year-old, and TikTok served it. There was more than 500 videos about drug use, references to cocaine, meth addiction, and promotional videos for online sales of drug products and paraphernalia. And just so that one rabbit holed very severely on that topic. But other of the accounts that didn't rabbit hole so hard still were served many of these videos around drugs or also sex content, like you were mentioning.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people have been critical of these engagement-based algorithms. YouTube had a big problem with that as well. And just from what I've been reading, right, TikTok has this super algorithm which just hooks you in a lot faster. And you mentioned the example about the drug. So help us walk down how that worked, because it started off where the account was watched a video of a girl walking through a forest or whatever, supposedly looking for marijuana. The next day, it was a marijuana-themed cake, and then boom, it was just showing tons of 420 content, and that's how those rabbit holes kind of develop.
So the first couple days of these accounts, typically they'd be served with a broader range of more popular videos. Lots of funny content, but for example, this drug one, early on it sees this one marijuana-related video, rewatches it, then there's more popular content. Then the next day, another marijuana-related video, such as the cake you mentioned, rewatches it, and then those were all the signals that needed to rabbit hole then on marijuana and drugs kind of related topic, content for the future after that.
Right, and as I mentioned earlier, you shared some of this content with TikTok. What was their response to all of this? Because one of the things that they said is, you obviously set up bots, this isn't a real human, it's not a real person interacting there, so the experience is going to be different. But there was many accounts where, all of this content that is not for young teens like that, they shouldn't have been served up. So how did they respond to it?
Yeah, so your point, so TikTok, made very clear that humans have diverse and changing interests, and that's one of the ways that the behavior of humans won't quite match the experience of these bots. Why we did this was that there's not an easy way, TikTok doesn't have a way for people to be able to see clearly what things in general see on the platform. Parents